Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for joining today's special edition community forum on presenting the Internet Society 2020 Action Plan. We'll start with Andrew, President CEO Internet Society, presenting the introduction to the 2020 plan.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today. We're going to talk today about the action plan for 2020 and to talk about the principles that guided us in this. Then I'll turn it over to various people in order to give an overview of the plans that we have over the course of the year, and then we'll come back and we'll talk a little bit about the organization and so on. The way we developed this plan for 2020 was a little different than we've done in previous years. We've been saying for many years that the internet is for everyone, but our goal has been to engage our community in order to try to develop these plans. And so we continue to have this vision that guides us. The internet is for everyone. In order to do that, we need to map to our 2025 strategy. This was something that we talked about over the course of the year, that we developed in cooperation with you. There was some survey of the community about this, and we'll be talking about that a little bit later. But fundamentally, this is our goal. We're trying to ensure an open, globally connected, secure, and trustworthy internet. And what that means is that we're going to focus on three areas. We're going to build the internet, we're going to promote the internet model, and we're going to defend the internet. This is the global network of networks that enables us all to do these things. So this is our stepping stone to the future. We want an internet that is bigger, it has more people on it, it has more connectivity, and that it's stronger. So as I was saying, we're trying to work around these three things. We're going to build the internet, promote the internet, and defend it. And what we said this year was that we were going to focus on certain strategic goals. We're going to extend the internet to communities that do not have it and need it most. We're going to promote the internet model of networking as the preferred model because we believe that it is the best way to build networks. We're going to try to convince key governments of the world to adopt policies that favor the internet model and improve internet connectivity. We want to promote the deployment of technologies and protocols that secure the interconnection of those independent networks. That's the fundamental part of the network of networks model of how you build the internet. And we need to defend the internet against the many, many attacks that are being mounted against it. We need to shape the policies of key governments in favor of the growth of independent networks that are free to interconnect. We need to counter attempts by key governments to undermine encryption. And we need to defend against shutdowns by increasing the cross-border connectivity and resiliency. These are really the things that we want to focus on this year. In order to undertake this focus, what we're aiming to do is to pay attention to projects. The projects are the way we deliver the things that we want to do, the tangible work that we can do to make the internet bigger and stronger. We're trying to place the Internet Society, and that means all of us together, not just the staff, as the place where stuff gets done for the internet. The thing that we are the people who are trying to make the internet better. That means that we'll inspire others to join our cause, that will catalyze the movement. We're going to try to attract more funding to scale our projects, to make them more effective, to achieve our goals. And we're going to try to exert a stronger influence on the internet because we are the effective people. Now, what I want to do is turn this over to Rinalia Abdul Rahim, who will talk a little bit about how we designed these things, how the pieces fit together, and the principles behind the design of this. Rinalia.
Thank you, Andrew. Hello, everyone. I hope you can all hear me okay. I'd like to give a brief overview about the community consultations that we had this year on the focus of the action plan for year 2020. In March, we sent a survey out to you, members of our community, and we asked for your feedback on whether you support our proposed focus on build, promote, and defend the internet. This focus would apply not only for the 2020 action plan, but also for our longer-term strategy, which we call Strategy 2025. We also asked whether you support the objectives under each of the three areas, which Andrew just went through a few minutes ago. And we asked for your sense of how effective you felt ISOC was in its work in these areas currently. So more than 3,000 of you responded, which is excellent for a global level survey of our community. The responses came from all regions, all sectors, and all parts of community. More than 50% of the responses came from members of our chapters and SIGs, and about 30% came from individual members who are not chapter or SIG members. The rest of the responses came from our organizational members and partners. The highest number of responses came from Africa, the Asia-Pacific region, followed by Latin America and the Caribbean region. These three regions comprise slightly more than 80% of all responses, and the rest came from Europe, North America, and the Middle East, the whole world entirely. Your main feedback for us from the survey is as follows. You gave significant support to the focus areas, build, promote, and defend the internet. You also gave significant support to all of the objectives, all of them. And you indicated that you felt that ISOC was fairly effective in these areas currently, but there is room for improvement. And some of you provided extensive feedback on what you would like us to improve on, and we paid close attention to this. Based on your feedback and support, we asked ISOC staff to propose projects in the three focus areas that would meet the objectives that Andrew went through. Our staff came up with more than 70 projects, and the executive team selected only 9. We picked less than 10 because we need to concentrate ISOC resources and efforts in order to have a higher level of impact globally. We then sent out a brief profile of the projects to you for input and whether you are interested in collaborating or being involved in those projects. This happened just in August. The most significant interest came from chapters and SIGs. 41 chapters and SIGs expressed interest in one or more of the projects. So recently, in October, we reviewed the 9 selected projects against organizational and staff resources that would be available in 2020. And we determined that we needed to fold one of the projects, the one on internet shutdown, into 2 of the other projects. You will hear more about this during the project's presentation, and this is why we ended up with 8 projects instead of 9. Let's go to the project's overview slide, which is the one that you have on right now, perhaps. On this slide, you can see that from a focus on build, promote, and defend the internet, we're essentially working on the internet growth, making the internet bigger, we like to say it that way, and making a stronger internet. 3 of the projects are in the areas of internet growth, and 5 of them are in the area of stronger internet. All of these projects are meant to help us achieve our strategic goals, an open, globally connected, secure, and trustworthy internet for everyone. We are also committed to measuring our impact and effectiveness at all levels, the individual level, the project level, and the organizational level. Key performance indicators are being developed and will be reported upon and shared with our community and the public via an impact report that will be issued annually. So to have a better idea about the projects, I invite my colleague, Joseph Lorenzo Hall, whom we just call Joe, to introduce the projects under his Stronger Internet portfolio. And after Joe, Jane Coffin will introduce the projects under her Internet Growth portfolio. Joe, over to you.
Hello, everyone. I'm a new face around here. My name is Joseph Lorenzo Hall, or Joe. I'm the Senior Vice President for a Strong Internet. I joined ISOC in October after 7 years at NGO called the Center for Democracy and Technology as their chief technologist. Really excited to share with you 5 Internet Strong projects today. Let's get into it. Next slide, please. So the very first an anchor project we talk about in terms of promoting the internet way of networking. For over 30 years, open and voluntary standards and practices have allowed the internet, the great network of networks, to flourish. And with that has come great innovation, access, and vastly increased ability to communicate about things like the state or prices of crops on a farm, or literally the entire corpus of the online encyclopedia Wikipedia. However, recent years have seen governments take a more sovereignty-based approach to regulating the internet, and at the same time, a few powerful companies and actors have increasingly consolidated control over internet infrastructure and the data that flows over it. This first project is an anchor or a foundation, as I said, for much of the Internet Society's work, and we will articulate a positive vision and aggressively promote open standards and voluntary practices based off of a decentralized infrastructure, and show how that can lead to benefits that are much more substantial than sovereign approaches with choke points. We're going to advocate for this internet way of networking and a number of regulatory processes that are going to take place over 2020. Notably the Digital Service Act in the EU and Section 230 in the United States, which has been under increasing threat in recent years. And we'll also carefully articulate practices we consider antithetical or the opposite of the internet way of networking, and increasingly restricted network environments or where proprietary centralized systems threaten this internet way of doing our work. We're going to work on extending encryption. Encryption has been a focal point for battles commonly referred to as the crypto wars for almost 25 years now, and these battles continue. Some governments see strong end-to-end encryption as a threat to law enforcement, things like fighting terrorism and public safety, but nothing could be further from the truth. What we do here is trade one type of safety for another type of safety. And encryption is literally the glue that holds the entirety of our online lives together, from our financial transactions to health records to communications between each and every human online. And we've been making great strides in encryption technically, but in the policy and advocacy arena, it's still quite a bit under threat. We have two big goals for our encryption advocacy work in 2020. The first is to really work on creating a powerful, intuitive narrative around how vital strong end-to-end encryption is to life in online environments for a variety of audiences, everyone from lay people to the technically informed folks. And the second big goal is to, with the Internet Society's unique global reach and unique set of expertise, both internal to ISOC and with the larger ISOC community, we're going to create a diverse set of coalitions that span the entire globe to help support strong encryption. So wherever it's under threat, there'll be people there to advocate and explain why it's important. We have 8 countries we've identified as places where encryption battles are likely going to pop off next year, including Australia, the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, India, Germany, France, and Brazil. Manners. So this is about securing global routing. I can't tell you how many people I talk to who really have no idea how things get routed on the internet, and they shouldn't really. Those people shouldn't have to worry about those kinds of things. But unfortunately, reliably routing around the world is a critical block, a critical building block for a trustworthy global internet. And unfortunately, there's still just too much opportunity for injection of false routing information that can either be erroneous on error, or can often sometimes be people trying to impersonate certain networks to steal Bitcoin and stuff like that. Manners, the project that we've had at Internet Society for many years now, tries to overcome this by setting a set of norms. This is Manners, right? Means mutually agreed norms for routing security. And this matter sets a baseline of concrete actions that network operators and folks who have networks can use to decrease the potential for false information or erroneous information being injected into the global routing infrastructure. And right now, Manners is a growing and global community of more than 200 networks and network operators around the world who have agreed to adopt these kinds of protections. In terms of 2020 work, we have a lot of things that we're focused on doing. We want to make sure we grow the Manners community, so have many more networks and network operators joining Manners and agreeing to implement the requirements. We want to mobilize a much broader set of external communities with awareness of Manners, so not just internet service providers, but and internet exchanges, but things like content distribution networks, which are increasingly people's first entry point into the internet and the web. We want to improve the measurement of routing security so that we know how good we're doing, or if in fact we're creating problems, and we want to increasingly build capacity among network engineers so they understand these sets of requirements. We hope to double Manners membership in 2020 and include new kinds of organizations, such as content delivery networks, as I said before, and we're going to get the Manners Observatory, which is a measurement platform that measures the impact of Manners participants' actions. We want the Manners Observatory to become a production service, incorporating all sorts of information about IXPs and improving the data quality and sustainability. I really love time. Feel free to talk to me about it some other time if you like time too. Time is this really interesting concept that we all have to agree on in order to do our work. And accurate time is really important for the internet. There are all sorts of things that depend on accurate time. A lot of general purpose security mechanisms, such as when you set up a encrypted communication, it depends on having very accurate time for things like certificates. And digital signatures, the things that, for example, protect your software updates when they're coming down from a company that gives you software. All those things depend on having accurate time, or people can do bad things. Unfortunately, time on the internet is not very well authenticated. So it's not hard to spoof time and create someone's clock, make someone's clock not be accurate, which you can use to attack them, or even, you may miss your meeting or something like that, right? In this case, this is a somewhat small project, but we're working hard to stimulate the implementation of more secure network time protocols. And we want to raise awareness and promote the adoption of these secure network time protocols, and then build capacity and actually decrease cost and risk of deployment of these kinds of more secure forms of time synchronization. And in 2020, we're going to work with network time operators and folks like operating system vendors and a whole slew of folks to try and get secure network time in a much more a much larger potential proportion of the internet infrastructure. This is a new project, and so this year is about developing test beds, about setting targets, and trying to figure out how to actually watch the development of time security over the next 5 years, and figuring out what we could do to make sure that, just like things like HTTPS, which is now ubiquitous in the web, that secure network time is ubiquitous throughout the internet infrastructure. This one is actually another small project, but critical. At ISOC, at the Internet Society, we noticed that we weren't actually using as many open standards and open infrastructure pieces that we could. And when we asked ourselves, why aren't we using those things? It turns out it's just hard, and that it takes quite a bit of development to stand up services that use open standards and protocols. And the internet, right, has been built on these open, freely available standards. But unfortunately, there's just not enough information and awareness about how to actually do things like, for example, set up a website using comprehensive sets of open standards, security settings, and privacy practices. Here, what we're going to do is, starting with web servers, we're going to we're going to build and deploy and document 4 standard reference web servers completely operating on open standards and protocols, each of them having a content delivery network and not. So 2 different web servers, each with a content delivery and not, so a total of 4. Target this kind of documentation at small to medium-sized organizations and enterprises. It's a very large chunk of the web ecosystem. These folks often don't have the kinds of resources or expertise to easily implement the latest things that we would want. And the reason we want this is because there are a whole slew of advanced, some not so advanced, but just not well deployed standards such as DNSSEC, IPv6, and things like the brand new TLS 1.3, which is highly secure. We want to make sure that people can very easily stand up a web server that speaks those kinds of protocols. And we're going to document this and actually go out and promote them, promote these kinds of documentations in this sort of standard architecture in places like GitHub, Stack Exchange, and community forums. And we're hoping in further years to tackle things beyond web servers. But this is the first project to actually have the beginning of a suite of actual deployments and reference architectures for open standards. That's it for me, and I'd like to turn it over right now to my counterpart, Jane Coffin, the Senior Vice President for Internet Growth.
Hello, everyone. It's great to see all of you online. And I want to thank those of you that helped us formulate what would be the projects we've put forward. And as Joe just described to you, he's working on that Internet Strong, or more secure side. The suite of projects that we're working on in the Internet Growth, which I'm leading, or building more internet, more of it, and also building the networks of people to help support that infrastructure, comprise 3 different projects. The first project that I'm going to speak about are the community networks projects, and some of you have been great supporters of ours on this, and we thank you for that. As you know, from the meta perspective, half of the world is connected and the other half is not. We know that connectivity brings socioeconomic development, and we're working really hard with you and partners around the world like APC, Digital Empowerment Foundation, and others to build these networks. We know that they are not the magic solution, but they are one solution in a suite of solutions to provide more connectivity. Connectivity that obviously brings socioeconomic development, opportunity, and connects people that are unconnected, something that we all want to see change. And as you can see from this slide, we know that every day without connectivity is a day of lost opportunity. We're going to try, as we work through this project, as Rinalia had indicated, look after KPIs that help us track what we're doing and help you track what we're doing, so you can see the hardcore example of how we're doing what we're doing around the world and where we're building that connectivity. We're hoping that community networks will be accepted by policymakers and regulators around the world as a compatible and sort of complementary way of networking. We're seeing the importance of change, and many of you have helped us do that, so thank you again for that. We're also seeing where governments have come along with us. And recently, I'm here in the UK for some meetings and was meeting with Ofcom, the regulator, where they are changing the way they're looking at spectrum, and we're hoping to bring governments like them along with us. And of course, many governments in Latin America have been changing the way they look at providing that connectivity. So we're looking at building stronger communities of interest, training those people so that local connectivity is the way to go, and strengthening that local technical capacity, and obviously the human networks that help sustain that capacity, which is important to all of us in building that better internet. The second project of the 3 is this fostering infrastructure and technical communities, which sounds very techy, but bottom line is this is supporting our internet exchange point work and our network operator group work, which is strengthening those partners that work with us to build NOGs, support them and sustain them and develop them more. And the same with the internet exchange points. As many of you know, this is basic local infrastructure that in some countries doesn't exist and does not allow that cheaper, better, faster internet. So we've got a wonderful group of humans on the ISOC staff side, but more importantly, a fabulous group of people out there in the community working with us. We've brought so many people along, from the training side to the helping us implement the development and sort of leveling up, making the IXPs better, that we've seen such great success across Africa, Latin America, Asia, and Europe, quite frankly. And so we're working with our communities of interest, a lot of the iStar, internet registries, and others to do this work. The importance of that work, as highlighted by Rinalia before with the KPIs, is that we'll be tracking this work so that you can help us track our progress. And we're very interested in making sure that we're working with many of you to do this work, both on the community network side, the internet exchange point side, and other. So some of the outcomes of our work in 2020, we hope to support the creation of 5 new IXPs, strengthen 10 in existing IXPs, and support local internet growth in general. Because as many of you know, the IXPs are enablers of the internet ecosystem and growth. And training people in key geographies, we'll be working on that and letting you know where that will be. And we'll be looking at creating the seeds to sow for sustainable communities. You can't do anything without the data that you need, and this has been a key thing that Andrew has been implementing across the organization since he came in. And given that many of us do track that data and work with other communities of interest, we need to start thinking of ways to highlight measurement better, not only for our own projects, but for partner projects. So we're trying to position ourselves as a key reference for understanding the state of the internet's health and infrastructure. And I should have mentioned before that we have great staff who are leading on community networks. That'll be Juan Perano and Max Stucci. On internet exchange points, it's Michuki Mwangi and Christian O'Flaherty. And here on measurements, it's David Belson and Matt Ford, key people who have been working throughout the community and with many of you for years. And so we're positioning our project leaders as some of our key experts to work with all of you. So on this project, we're looking at creating and launching a web-based dashboard for public consumption, meaning something that you can take a look at and take that key data and solidify that evidence-based policymaking, regulatory change, and also just solidifying the points that you make with different stakeholders in the regions. It's also an attempt to increase awareness about the internet and the internet model through promotion of this dashboard. And it's the internet way of working that Joe was talking about. All of these projects are symbiotic, but they're also key to supporting some of the work that Joe and the teams are doing with all of you in the future. So there'll be cross-pollination from, say, the internet exchange point work to Manners, because we'll be working to make sure that we help with secure routing by bringing some of that data from the Manners team into the IXP work that we do. So all of this has a bit of a symbiosis, and we've been taking great care to try and bring that in with what we do. And we thank you for all of the responses we've gotten to some of the questions we've asked about what you thought was important to do in the future. So please look forward to working with us, and we'll be reaching out to you more and more. And just a huge shout out to the community and our chapters for all the support you've given us and all the work we plan to do with you in the future. So thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Rinalia now to talk about partnership.
Thank you very much, Jane. So apart from the 8 projects, we are going to continue 3 of the existing initiatives that we've done before. The first one is the Internet Hall of Fame, which to basically inspire new generations of internet leaders and to honor our internet pioneers. The second initiative that we're going to continue is the Jonathan B. Postel Service Award to recognize leaders in the development of the internet. And also we're going to continue a very special conference referred to as NDSS, and that stands for Network and Distributed Systems Security Symposium. This symposium ranks among the top 5 security conferences in the world, and it is actually quite critical to build the research community that makes the work on security and trustworthiness of the internet possible. And so this is about community engagement and outreach. And here are the things that we would like to do and to improve upon. We would like to strengthen our engagement with our community by having a better idea about what you are interested in and connecting with you better on areas of shared interest. And so we would like to have a lot of information from you. We would like to focus on improving chapter health across the board, and we would like to broaden our organization's membership. In addition to that, we would like to also work with our global and regional partners through our projects, and at the same time enhance our relationships with them, specifically to achieve our strategic goals. And we would like to continue to be a strong voice for the internet globally. To have a better idea of how we are going to organize ourselves to deliver what is pledged in the action plan, and also to address the question that Eduardo Diaz asked in the chat just now, I pass the mic back to Andrew.
Thank you, Rinalia. We just completed a large staff meeting in which we went over a new structure for the organization, and I outlined this in the presentation to the board that was held in public recently. But there are really fundamentally a couple of things to work here, to talk about here. The first is that we want to make it easier to do work across the organization. And that work across the organization does not just mean the staff, it means the whole organization, the internet society, the entire lot of us working together, trying to get things collaborated across the entire society. The other thing we want to do is to really put the point on what it is that we're trying to achieve. So we're trying to maximize the effectiveness of our projects, and that's really what the goal of this of this restructuring of the staff function is all about. So this is a diagram that is something of a schematic diagram in order to give you a picture of what it is that we have, of how it is that we have reorganized things. You can think of this as a diagram that is laid out around compass points, which is why we have northwest, northeast, southeast, and southwest there. But the names are not important. You could call them, you know, John, Paul, George, and Ringo, or whatever you like. The main point here is just to be able to talk about the diagram. The top of this diagram on this picture is really all about the projects. And so in that part of the diagram, we have the strong internet and internet growth. There are two senior vice presidents reporting to me, Jane and Joe. You've already heard from them. And they are responsible for delivering the projects, for making sure that these projects are reach their goals, and also for making sure that they engage the communities of interest in the appropriate ways. In order to support that, we have an Office of Project Staff, which will be led by Sally Wentworth. Many of you know Sally, and she will be leading that group. And this is the primary project staff who are directly devoted to these projects, to the projects that were just laid out for you. On the south of this diagram are two portions of the organization that are really for ongoing things. So you can think of the projects as having, you know, clear and distinct beginnings, middles, and ends. But on the south of this diagram are the things that continue from year to year and that support the entire operation. One of these is in the southwest, and this is the standard business operations, the Office of the CFO. This will continue to be led by Sandy Spector. And in here we have all of the usual corporate functions that you would expect: legal, human resources, et cetera, et cetera. You can see them there. Down and to the right, we have the Office of Strategy, Communications, and Engagement. This is led by Rinalia Abdul Rahim, who is also reporting to me. And in here, we have a lot of efforts around the community, the way that we engage with our partners, institutional relationships, and so on. That's the External Engagement Office that you see there, and also the Community Engagement Office, chapters and SIGs, membership, and so on. Now, you will note that last year, we put together the partnership and community engagement pieces. And I think it is safe to say that this was an experiment that was not completely successful. We felt that it was not as attentive to our community inside the Internet Society as we would have liked. And so we have separated that a little bit more in order to increase the importance that we place on that. This also puts the External Engagement Office leading the regional relations, and the regional vice presidents are reporting in that External Engagement Office. It's important to recognize in this diagram, however, that what we have done is integrated the overall regional bureau service into the wider staff, so that it's possible for the regions to participate more effectively, the regional offices to participate more effectively in the projects, and for the projects to work more effectively across the regions. None of this suggests that our devotion and the importance that we place on regional offices is going away. We continue to find that an extremely important part of our engagement. Similarly, we continue to believe that our chapters and our membership are critical parts of the way that we work together, and that is why this diagram is designed to show that the strength of this organization is really at the edges. The other piece of this, which is not on this diagram, but there's a link to via me, the Office of the President, to the Internet Society Foundation, which, as you know, was spun up this year and is led by Sarah Armstrong. That's a separate organization as a legal matter, so that's the reason that it doesn't appear on this picture here today. So I hope that gives you a flavor for how this is going to work. This is a much more collaborative model of operating than we may have had in the past, and that's in response to the feedback that we've heard from you, that we have not always been as responsive and as collaborative as we would have liked. To respond directly to the question about how many SVPs there are, you can see them all here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those are the people who are reporting directly to me. One of these is the CFO, but you can think of that as another SVP if you like. With that, I'll hand it back. I'll hand the microphone back so we can move on to the next portion of the discussion.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. For those who don't know me, I'm Joyce Dogniez, I'm VP Community Engagement. I hope you are all as excited as I am about the Action Plan 2020 and the projects that we have identified together. Thank you, Andrew, Rinalia, Jane, and Joe for walking us through the projects and also how this all came together. I think it was an important piece of the puzzle to address here. I'd now like to open the floor for questions about the Action Plan 2020 and the 8 projects as you've just heard them. Let's see what we have in terms of questions already. I know there was already some discussion on the chat, so I'll see if I can drill out what we have. So I know Fred Baker from the US has had a bit of a conversation with Aisha, I believe, from Malaysia already on suggestion, and this is for you, Joe, on a suggestion to convince governments that encryption is important. And the suggestion from Fred was that might we identify ways that the governments in question use and depend on encryption. For example, in the United States, mention type 1 encryption and its uses. There's been a bit of a chat already, but Joe, is there any comment you want to add to that?
Yes, and thank you for the question between the two of you, Fred and the other person whose name escapes me. So one of the things that we really hope to do, it may not happen this year, but it definitely is a key sort of metric for our success over coming years, is that things like exceptional access is a term for governments requiring companies to build essentially backdoors, ways for them to access the unencrypted information that is being encrypted in a communication, or on your device if it's not actually involved in a communication. But we hope that within a few years that governments recognize that these exceptional access mechanisms are not going to help secure things. In fact, that they will create more weaknesses and liability, especially from a cybersecurity perspective, that they'll create more trouble than they're worth, and that we have to find other ways to counter those kinds of threats, including actual police work, which is very difficult, and changing how we think about how law enforcement and intelligence services actually do their work. The evidence right now is that encryption is not the thing that is thwarting them in their work. It's more understanding the technical aspects of these systems, who to go to with a request and things like that. So they make a lot of noise about encryption, but it turns out in many cases that's not actually their problem. So we hope to emphasize that, look, that you will do more damage to your economy, to society, to a whole slew of things by trying to include these kinds of mechanisms in these or mandating these kinds of mechanisms in the technology of the internet infrastructure.
Thank you, Joe. And I believe that with this, you actually answered the question from Emmanuel from the UK already, who had a question about how to balance the user privacy with the threat of online criminals. So unless you want to add something specifically around that, I'm just looking at you while I say that.
No, I'm good.
So in that case, we have the next question was from Osman, and yes, Jane, it's for you. So how to convince governments to allow, create, and support IXPs?
Thank you very much for the question. This is something we're working on with our teams more and more around the globe, and we have great experts in Asia that we are working with as well, Osman. And we can actually, work with you directly to help you with the information you need. But we've been doing this for many years when we work with policymakers and regulators to understand the importance of opening up market, but also bringing more competition in that allows at that neutral platform, the Internet Exchange Point, to, oops, sorry, they're doing construction in my hotel, to allow for more internet growth and sort of cheaper, better, faster traffic, to make a simplified version. We'll be working with the community to also put out slide decks and more information. We can do some training with you directly if you need be, so that we can give you the key data points, as we were talking about with the measurement side, and some of the experiences around the world to support you, because sometimes regulators and policymakers like to hear that there are 400 IXPs around the world. There are 15 governments who've done A, B, and C or supported them. So we absolutely can help you do that at the local level. And the key thing I want to stress on all of the work we're doing on the infrastructure development is that local training and the local connectivity. We don't want to be a single point of failure. Even in the region with you, we want you to be able to take that information, grow those debates, and help you develop IXPs, more infrastructure.
Thank you, Jane. The next question, we're going to stay with you for the next one as well. So Fred had a question on, will non-technical threats also be in the dashboard, the measurement dashboard, or mostly the technical state?
It'd be great if we could understand what you mean by the other than non-technical threats, but Fred, if you mean governments, that might be an interesting thing we could talk to you more about, but we want to take care that we're being respectful when we're working with countries around the world. So if you could give me some examples, I can help better answer that question, or I can turn to Matt or David, who are both on the call. I'm happy to do that. But we're still framing that dashboard, and if you have suggestions for us, we'd love to have your thoughts. And you can reach me at coffin@isoc.org, or Dave Belson, BELSON, at isoc.org, and Matt Ford at isoc.org. We're happy to help you with that, with any suggestions you have.
The next question, I believe, is easier to respond in the chat, is where can we find the links about the grants? So I'm going to ask one of the colleagues to type the website of the foundation here in the chat. That would be very useful. That was for Bhuvana Meenakshi. I hope I did pronounce that correctly. And the next one in line we have is Jay Salzberger. Jay, I believe you wanted to speak, so we'll unmute you and have you ask your question.
So there's something called, as you all know, IPv6. Let me point out that at least in the USA, and I think every country where they have these little portable tracker computer telephones, people think they're connected to the net, but they're actually not, because they're behind the carrier grade NAT. Has ISOC considered dealing with the extraordinary suppression of the internet by the massive use of these carrier grade NAT systems?
Thank you, Jay.
Could you hear me? You could hear me, okay.
Yes, we could. Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. I'm looking at my wonderful teammates to see Andrew raised his hand. There you go.
Hi, Jay. It's Andrew Sullivan.
Hi, Andrew.
Thank you for the question. I think it's important to recognize two things about this. The first thing that I would say is this is one of the critical things that we're trying to talk about in that project that you heard about today, the internet way of networking. The internet way depends on multiple networks interconnecting to one another voluntarily, and you're quite right that one of the things that has happened is that a lot of various kinds of network address translation, including carrier grade NATs, get in the way of that. But the second thing about it, and the reason that I'm excited about that project as well, or another reason I'm excited about it, is because it talks about how the internet way builds you a better, faster, cheaper network that is improved over other kinds of networks. And yet it has all of these additional benefits. It has all of these qualities that we like about the internet. This is a fundamental fact about the internet way of networking, and it's getting suppressed in a lot of the discussions about this. Because one of the things that we have discovered is that large-scale carriers who have deployed a lot of carrier-grade NAT quickly find that actually it's expensive and unreliable. That what they're trying to do is get rid of some of that carrier grade NAT that they've deployed, because it turns out that it doesn't work very well, and their customers call them up and complain, and that raises their costs. And the better that we can do a job of explaining this reality to people, the fewer people who are going to embrace those kinds of technologies and go off and build them again. So that's actually one of the critical things that we're trying to do with the internet model of networking, that we're trying to show people, hey, look, this model puts you in charge, and it allows you to deliver what you want. I'll also point out to you the link that Fred Baker put in the chat. It's a great picture about how IPv6 deployment is uneven. But you know what the speculative fiction people like to say, the future is already here. It's just unevenly distributed, and similarly, that's true of IPv6.
Thank you, Andrew. Next question is from John Moore. Hi, John. I will combine, I think, one of your two questions that you posted one after the other. One of them has been answered in the chat, I believe. So the question from John is, in addition to strengthening the chapters, what specific steps are being considered to make individual membership meaningful? Rinalia, I believe that's one for you.
Yes, that's mine. Thank you very much, Joyce, and thank you, John, for the question. And just to emphasize again about chapter training on leadership and effective management, I think the team in Latin America did very well, Nancy Quiros in particular, and we are definitely planning on scaling those training up to the rest of the world in other regions, and our chapter team is very excited to take that on. Regarding making individual memberships more meaningful, we are working on engaging more individual members through our projects, because that is the focus of the Action Plan 2020. So that's the primary channel. And once we've aligned those individuals who are interested in collaborating and working on those projects itself, we will move on to working out our individual membership strategy more extensively once resources become available next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Rinalia. The next question we have is from Prasad from Sri Lanka, and I'll take advantage of this moment to say congratulations, because he has just been elected as the chair of the chapter. So congratulations to your new appointment, and thank you for the passion you're putting in there. So the question from Prasad is, what part of ISO Global can take to influence the internet operators in Sri Lanka to provide more internet coverage, specifically in the northern and eastern part? Can ISO Global be an influencer that can push governments to provide, or government in this case, to provide more coverage? And Jane, I'm looking at your end while I say the question.
Provide more network coverage. That's part of our community network and IXP program programmatic work. And again, as I've noted in the chat, we're happy to work with anyone and take great suggestions from all of you. The community networks are designed to work in rural, remote, and urban underserved areas. As Andrew had said earlier, those that need it most. So we'll be looking at the communities that do need it most. You know, are they, again, it could be rural, remote, and urban. And that's working with partners where we can support people who are deploying networks directly. That's working with other new partners to start up community networks, and also internet exchange points that strengthen the greater ecosystem and bring more parity and neutrality to internet ecosystems and traffic exchange, and keeping local traffic local. All of that also helps in the build out local internet ecosystem and the human ecosystem of experts. So I should make sure that we're clear that it's not just the technical side of building the infrastructure itself, but it's the human extra infrastructure to support the technical infrastructure.
Thank you, Jane, and thanks, Joyce.
Most welcome, Prasad. Thank you, Jane. So the next question is from Sharif from the Maldives. Hi, Sharif. I see that the team has already answered the question on setting up the chapter in the chat. So Christine, thank you for that. The second question from Sharif was related to setting up an IXP in the Maldives, and then exploring opportunities for setup of measures for internet service provision. So Jane, that's I think you answered the question with your previous intervention, but I don't know if there's anything you want to add specifically for the Maldives.
Just to say that we've worked with island nations in the past to help put in IXPs so it's not exclusionary, and that's an important thing to know for small island developing states. And I recently met with, sorry, they're drilling right above my head. It's quite something. But we will be keen to work with you. And there are ecosystems that we can help you develop. I'll just keep it simple and feel free to reach out to me. Thank you. And to some of my colleague Michuki Mwangi, who's on this call too. It's mwang@isoc.org, and Michuki's worked with countries all over sub-Saharan Africa and the world, quite frankly.
Thank you, Jane. Good luck with the drilling there. The next question we have is from Nicolas, I should say, from Uruguay, Nicolas Fiumarelli. So again, Jane, a question for you on IXP and measurements. So in the presentation, you mentioned about IXPs at the borders of the countries to prevent shutdowns. Is there any strategy for this? And I'll pause. There's a second part to the question, but I'll let you answer that one first. It's probably between you and Joe, but
yeah. Nicolas, I'm sorry, I meant community networks at the borders where we're helping strengthen cross-border connectivity. And it's not just community networks, those are small operators as well. We're not just supporting the community networks in that sense, but also small operators that need help from a technical perspective. If there is a city near a border that could benefit from having an internet exchange point, and there's a community of interest that we can help train with all of you, that would be perfect. But again, we're not going to try and force connectivity in certain areas, internet exchange point connectivity without a community of interest to support it. But we would be love to talk to you more about IXPs and measurements, but because we're trying to bring in more of the evidence-based policymaking, our teams have done that around the world. But we're also looking at what some of the standard data sets would be that we can use to help strengthen our chapters in promoting IXPs and doing more work with us in the future. And as Rinalia said, individual members that are keen to help as well, that have expertise.
Excellent. Thank you, Jane. And by this, you actually answered the second part of the question. So I think we're all good. I hope that answered everything. The next question is from Fred in the Netherlands. Hello, Fred. Some countries in the EU are looking at how to prevent end-to-end encryption as a default in 5G. Is the Internet Society Encryption Project also about these kinds of access technology and getting involved in associations like BEREC and GSMA? I think, Joe, that is one,
that is a
one for you.
Mouthful there. I'm very new, so I'm not exactly sure. I know we have some relationships with GSMA and 3GPP. I will say technically, it's going to be pretty hard to deploy 5G in a way that would frustrate the pretty amazing technical security mechanisms that are built into that standard. That being said, it's not deployed yet, and so there's a lot of potential for that good security work to not be built into the systems that are put out there. Now, we are the Internet Society, not the Cellular Mobile Network Society, so we have to be a little careful with how we focus on certain things. That being said, there are billions of people that access the internet through cellular and mobile networks. So I guess I'm rambling, but it's something that I'm really concerned with and that we're keeping an eye on, and that we have capacity to respond to as problems arise. And we have good technical relationships with folks like John Mattson at Ericsson, who is one of the big security architects of the 5G suite of standards. But we don't have any specific plans about that other than in general as part of our encryption advocacy work. Hopefully that answered your question, but let me know if it did not.
Thank you, Joe. The next question we have is from Nurani Nimpuno. Hi, Nurani. Nurani is curious, I think, Jane, we're coming back to you now, on hearing a bit more about the areas of focus on measurement and really understanding what we are planning to do in that area. So a little bit more information and thoughts about what data to collect and how we intend to collaborate with other organizations in this area. And she's looking for your thoughts on how to use that data in your conversations with governments and policymakers.
Nurani, you've hit it squarely on the nail on the head there with how we can work with governments, regulators, and others to help promote more open, affordable, globally connected internet. And so part of what we'll be doing is looking at putting different, we'll reach out to you. We'd love to have a chat with you actually. And we'd bring Matt and David into that conversation because they're the real experts. I'm just supporting them. But on the measurements project in specific, we're looking at putting use cases together based on certain types of measurements that we'll take a look at. Again, we'll come up with that suite of measurements, working with the community to take a look at what we can do to help support the people that do work on shutdowns better than we do. We're not going to try and do what they do. Again, that's we're not going to name the organizations right now because we're still working on this. But we'll get back to you on this for sure. But on the IXP and CN side, we'll be taking a look at traffic levels, generation of IXs in regions, what the different statistics are in volume, where we can look at latency and throughput, and again, putting together with the community, with you and others, that suite of statistics and information on the measurement side so we can make a better case for working with policymakers and regulators to allow IXPs and CNs to thrive.
Thank you, Jane. The next question we have is from Rapudo Howie. What is the new role of the ISOC Foundation, and how is it connected to the strategy and alignment beyond 2020? So, Andrew, I think that one needs to come to you.
And Joyce, I'm on the call as well. This is Sarah Armstrong, the Executive Director of the Internet Society Foundation. So, Andrew, if you want to start and then I can add, that's fine.
I was in fact just about to say that I believe Sarah's on the call. And,
oh, okay.
And I think we'd be more than happy to talk about this. So Sarah, over to you.
Okay, thanks. Hi, everyone. Yeah, the Internet Society Foundation is really a wonderful partner and complement to what's going on at ISOC. So we too are very dedicated to the mission of an open, globally connected, secure, trustworthy internet for all. That, in fact, is what we are going to do. And we're going to do it in partnership with you all. The part that matters the most to this community, I think, is what we'll be doing with the chapters. We will continue to do the Beyond the Net, continue to fund chapter programs, both medium, large, and small. So that will happen. But we also will try to achieve this mission and our overarching goal of really impacting humanity through the open internet by also working with organizations that are beyond those that we've worked with in the past. So we have other program areas, including strengthening communities, research, innovation, and disaster relief. And we'll be funding organizations that are going to help us achieve this mission for ISOC and for the foundation so that together we're stronger. And that's the direction that we're headed. We're posting our action plan on the Internet Society Foundation website, so you'll be able to read our direction. There's also a wonderful new crafted mission statement on there that we just posted. So please reach out, look at the Internet Society website, isocfoundation.org, which I did put up in the chat. But please too reach out to me anytime. I'm happy, and I have talked with a lot of you about it, but I'm much more clear on the direction. I now actually have a team, and we are moving forward to make sure that the mission of ISOC is achieved and that the goal of impacting humanity through an open internet is in fact something we can achieve as well.
Thank you, Sarah. So the next question we have is from Mexico, LAC chapter ISOC. It says, hello from Mexico. Is there any growth figure for the number of global members? Rinalia, do you want to take that one, or you want me to quickly jump in?
I think you should quickly jump in, Joyce.
We have the numbers, and we're happy to share the growth numbers. We generally speaking only publish the total numbers, but whoever it was from the Mexico chapter, feel free to drop me a note, and we can show that. I think it's for the chapter specific numbers, we can share that, and the global numbers we can share those numbers with the chapters if that's useful. Thank you, Rinalia. The next question is from Eliza Titus. Are there any M&E measures that ISOC is taking to ensure proper chapter management systems? We have frowns. I'm not sure, Eliza, if we understand the question fully. So if you are there and can speak, then it would be useful maybe to just have a bit of a clarifying comment here.
So I just wanted to understand, as we draw into the action plan 2020, I wanted to understand what those other measures that you could be putting in place for chapter leaders to follow, and you know, so that we achieve the action, the action points or the plan that we are trying to move forward to. Or we still follow the same things? I don't know. Sorry.
Rinalia's waving. I think Rinalia is ready to answer your question. Thank you, Eliza.
I will try. So on the one dimension, what we will try to measure in terms of success is what percentage of our chapter and SIG communities and also other parts of community would be engaged in the projects. And so if the chapters are interested in working with us on the projects, that to us is a measure of alignment and potential success based on the impact that we will measure after a year of implementation. And apart from that, in terms of measures that we have in place, they are related to chapter governance and health. And that is something that Joyce and her team, the community engagement team, is responsible for. And if you would like to know more about that, they would be more than happy to come back to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Rinalia. Thank you for the question, Eliza. The next question we have is from Eduardo Diaz. Hola, Eduardo, from Puerto Rico. His question is, I noticed that all projects presented are focused on technical aspects of the internet. Are there plans to include projects geared to the community, like, for example, increasing digital literacy and such?
Thank you for the question. This is a view that I've heard on a couple of occasions, and I've been a little surprised by it, to be honest with you, because I don't think that most of these issues are really technical ones. There are a couple of narrow technical issues in this list. There is obviously the time security issue is fairly narrowly technical, and the reason we're taking that on is because it's a place where there's a gap. There's the sort of deployment gap. There's not really a business model for time security, and somebody needs to work on that. And that's something that the Internet Society can do. We've undertaken the same thing with manners because that's the tradition. There is BCP 38 is what you need in order to improve security of routing. And yet, actually, we've had that for many years, and it hasn't happened. And so, how can we change the economics of that? So those are ones that are really sort of technically focused. But the rest of them are really more to do with policy and to do with the efforts around them. So, obviously, actually building a community network or actually building an IXP, there's genuine technology involved in that, but also building a community network means building up a community of people who understand how to use it, who understand the network that they're engaging with, and so on. This is a critical function, a critical part of what has to happen in those projects. The internet way of working is not really about the technology at all. It's about convincing people that this is a technology that is in their hands and that they have a hope of being able to control themselves. So it's much more to do with how do people engage with this technology that is transforming our world than it has to do with the particulars of any kind of particular technology. And I think that underlying these things are precisely the issues that you're talking about. These are places where we especially hope that we're going to be able to attract the community to contribute to these things. That was part of the reason that we sent around earlier this year the plans, and we said, look, we really want our community to participate in these things, and we can collaborate on delivering the projects or the components of the projects that fit within these things that are associated with the local conditions. Because I've heard many times that the Internet Society staff doesn't really understand the local conditions in a particular area, and that the chapters understand that better, the local membership understands that better. And you're right, of course that's true. And that's why we need, in fact, to work this way as the whole Internet Society rather than as just the staff. So that, to me, is what we're trying to do, is to develop a staff function for the whole Internet Society that focuses on a few things that we can deliver, because we can do that as a staff organization. But we're hoping that these are attractive to people. And when we surveyed people, Rinalia pointed this out earlier, when we put this out to comment, we got a lot of good support for these ones. So that's why these ones rose to the top. But what we want to do is make sure that the pieces of these that need to be delivered within local communities that are directly related to the issues that people are facing on the ground are delivered hand in hand with our chapters, with our members, so that we have some fighting hope of making the materials that we deliver relevant to the people that we're trying to deliver it for. You know, I don't think you can make a universal story about digital literacy. I think that the problems of digital literacy really come from where you start. And what that means is you need to understand where you're starting from. And that's really what we're hoping to deliver there. So I hope that gives you a flavor of what we're trying to do and answers your question. But if not, obviously, you know, follow up with me. I'm always happy to talk about this with you or with anybody else.
Thank you, Andrew. Next in queue, we have Mohammed Shabir. Mohammed, are you there?
Yes, thank you very much. I actually have two questions. One is, first, there is a small note. I'm sorry if it was already answered, so I joined a little bit late. My first question is that whether 2020 action plan has some specific actions for SIGs, special interest groups, in terms of streamlining their work and alignment with the mission of ISOC. And secondly, is there any specific project or plan which includes the digital accessibility for persons with disabilities? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. I think Rinalia, yes, you're nodding.
Thank you very much, Mohammed Shabir. Excellent question about the SIGs. So if you noticed earlier when I said responses from chapters and SIGs who are interested in collaborating and working with us on one or more of the projects, so we are definitely targeting and asking SIGs if they would be interested in aligning their work with any one of the 8 projects. And so if you have any SIGs that you are part of and they have not responded, I would strongly encourage that you get them to respond to us and we figure out how to work together. And in addition to that, if there are additional SIGs that members of ISOC would like to form to be part of projects for this year as well as for next year, that is of course open. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rinalia. And Mohammed, Dan York, who I know you know very well, will also add some comments on the work on accessibility that he's doing on the website and so on. He will drop a note in the chat for you to pick up. And I know you know each other, so I know you talk to each other on a regular basis. So feel free to reach out to Dan for those specific things related to accessibility in our systems.
Joyce, can I ask one question?
Hi, Anna.
Hi. You know, my question is, can 2 projects can we bring together 2 projects? I just try to explain what I mean. For example, we have one project for kids, for kids in school, yeah? And we use this room, this training room for kids all day. Can we organize another project which bring adults at evening time in same school? I remember that many years ago we tried to do something like this.
Anna, your question is related to chapter projects, if I understand this correctly.
Yes.
The best person to talk to about that is probably to talk with Nick, who can help with that. But Nick,
yeah. I just want to. I want to ask maybe something do that thing and have an experience in that such kind of project.
So maybe there's something we can discuss on the chapter call that we have. So have a conversation about how we can best do that at chapter level. I think this is not really related to the action plan 2020. So I would suggest that we move that topic to the next chapter call that I know you have on a regular basis with Nick. So we can definitely do that and have a conversation about that. The next question in queue I have, and I have to announce that this will be the last question we will take. It's from Simba Rashi, and the question is, how does ISOC seek to balance the issue of policy development and regulation with the technical aspects associated with the use of the net? The concern being that the policy and regulation seems to be an issue in sub-Saharan Africa, in particular, most developing nations, and the engagement with technical side of the use of the net. So the challenge, therefore, is how do chapters in such environments get the capacities to deal with the policy side of things? I'm looking at the colleagues to see who's waving. Andrew? Yes, thank you.
Sure, I can take that. Thank you for this question. I think this is really the heart of what it is to be the internet society. If we're going to be the internet society, we need to be able to talk both on the technology side and on the policy side at the same time. Because one of the problems, I'm here in London, for instance, and I was at an event last night where this very problem came up, because it was very clear that people were talking past each other. A number of people with technical assumptions were having a difficult time putting their point across to some policy people, and conversely. And I think that this is the really critical function that we can offer. The chapters and the SIGs need to be able to identify those problems and to be able, in their local context, and to be able to call on the Internet Society staff in order to help you and support you in putting across the urgent needs that you have in your local environment. And similarly, we need to provide the materials that support that and support it consistently. So that is what we are trying to do. That is the goal of the organizational change that you saw, the way that we have structured the portion of the org chart, which, by the way, is the staff org chart. I should have made that clear when I was presenting it earlier, because I am certainly not in the middle of the Internet Society. But the critical function here is to have an organization that can respond to you and can hook you up to all of the experts we have on the staff and all of the experts we have across our entire Internet Society community, so that it's possible for you to be able to reach back and say, hey, I've got this problem locally. I bet you somebody else has solved this on the internet. Can they help me out? That's what we're here to do. That's what the whole Internet Society exists to do. So we need to deliver on that. And I hope that you will hold us to it this year. I hope that that is something that you will ensure that the Internet Society staff delivers to you every time you have one of those problems. That's the core goal of having an Internet Society staff, to be able to support you in those kinds of efforts, because we want to make sure that the internet is for everyone.
Thank you very much, Andrew. And on that statement, I can say statement, right? I'd like to thank everybody very much for the participation. Thank you, Andrew, Rinalia, Jane, Joe, for answering the questions. But most of all, thank you all for participating and for asking all the questions. This is obviously very important. We have to get the action plan. The action plan is there for all of us, and we cannot do anything without all of you. So making sure that you are on board and that we have an active participation of our Internet Society community will be critical to the success of the impact that we can have with the action plan. So on that note, I actually have the honor of showcasing how all of you really make an impact at local level, and how you on a daily basis all change people's lives through the internet. And for the third year in a row, we have organized a global chapterthon where members of chapters implement a project at local level. And it is time to announce the winner. You all have participated, submitted your projects, your videos. You all have voted tremendously. We had very high numbers. And since images actually say more than words, I'll let the images do the announcement itself. So Ashlyn, please.
Africa, we have about 1 billion people who are not connected to the internet. For RadioNet, we use Raspberry Pi, which is a plug computer. The device, we host it in the community. It receives phone calls from wherever we are, so we are able to call into the device, leave a message. This gives us the ability to call in and send any kind of information.
Mandibulise, igama lam ndinguzuku, uChichifane, apha kwingcwala eQokolweni. Siqala iproject apha ye-Wi-Fi.
While South Africa has an internet penetration of 56%, the rural Eastern Cape largely remains an internet dead zone. Solution: help to close the internet gap by helping one village to install and maintain their own network infrastructure.
Bakwazi usebenzisa la hotspot, bazodinga i-voucher le. Ngokuthi ngokwathenge le voucher umuntu walapha ekuhlaleni uxhasa iproject le lapha ekuhlaleni ngokuthi ingakwazi ke ngoku ibe nemali ithenge more hotspot ukuze ilali le yonke ngoku.
Congratulations to the New York chapter, to the NYC Mesh project, and congratulations to the winners, all three winners, so Ghana and South Africa, and all of the participating chapters. It was, I'm sure, it was very hard. I mean, I saw actually all of the videos, and you actually did an amazing job. It was very hard, I'm sure, to actually select the winners. We had the community vote, and then we had a panel of experts, and so I know it was very hard to select the winners. So congratulations to all of you, and a special congratulations to the New York chapter and the NYC Mesh project. It is now time for me to pass the floor to Evelyn, who will bring us to a close, and I hope to see you soon on the net or elsewhere. Thank you very much. Evelyn, over to you.
Thank you so much, everyone who was on this call until the very end, and congratulations again to our three chapters that are winners in the Chapterthon competition. Congratulations, all of you. So this is the very end of our call today, and I will just take you through some action points. So how can you get involved if you want to get involved? Please read or download the Action Plan 2020 from our website. We have it available in English. It's also in French and Spanish. Please use it, read it, understand it, and get involved. And let us know which projects you'd like to be involved in. Log into your member portal and click on the button, edit my profile on the home page, go to Preferences tab, and select the edit button, projects of intersection. And then if you have questions about the action plan or PIR, please email those to isocmembership@isoc.org. And last but definitely not least, if you'd love to join our fabulous community, please find a chapter or SIG near you. You can find all of this information on our website. Thank you so much for taking the time to be part of this action plan presentation, and we'll see you on the web. Thanks, bye everyone.